Good morning, everyone, and allow me to welcome you all to the panel discussion today. The subject being decoding the new frontiers of healthcare. And to share the context, healthcare, as we all know, is an extremely essential service and is a very, very complex discipline. Given the huge population we have in the country and enormous geographical landscape, we constantly need to innovate to find solutions to address the multiple challenges we have, be it physical access, be it quality, be it affordability. And what the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us, and in fact, not just in the Indian context across the world, that there is need to reinvent the healthcare delivery models. And there actually is a much greater focus on technology to find solutions. And we have today three healthcare veterans amongst us as panelists and people with very, very diverse background. And I'm privileged to be moderating the session today. To give you a very quick background about myself, I have about 45 years experience with 25 years in the healthcare industry. And I was with the Apollo Hospital Group as the CEO of one of the companies, driving innovation through creative and different delivery models. We did the Apollo Clinic, we did the Cradle, and now I run a healthcare consulting firm called Medium Healthcare Consulting. And to give you the introduction about the panelists, we are privileged to have, let me start with Dr. Geetha Manjunath. And she is the founder, CEO, and CTO of NIRAMAI Health Analytics. She has over 25 years of rich experience in technology and research. She used to be with the government and Center for Development of Advanced Computing. She was with HP Labs. She was with Xerox Research Center, and her deep expertise, Dr. Geetha's deep expertise in the area of artificial intelligence, cloud computing, mobile and distributed computing, among others. Welcome, Dr. Geetha. Then we have Dr. Velumani, who is the creator of Thyrocare Technologies, one of the most successful companies in the diagnostic landscape in the country with over 40 years of experience. Dr. Velumani is known to be a disruptor. I think there's a lot which he has disrupted in the last few years, as we all know. And I'm sure going forward, he's going to do the same in many other areas. And finally, we have Dr. Ajay Bakshi. And Dr. Ajay Bakshi is the co-founder and CEO with NeuranceAI technology. And as the name suggests, it's basically a culmination of neurosciences and AI technology. And using that combination, Dr. Ajay is going to solve some of the most complex problems, healthcare problems across the globe. And Dr. Ajay brings a phenomenal amount of experience as a clinician and also as a management professional in the US and Europe, and for the last few years in the Indian context. So welcome, Dr. Geetha, welcome, Dr. Velumani, and welcome, Dr. Ajay, to the panel discussion.
Thank you.
And before I proceed, let me to the audience, I have a suggestion that let me announce something special for our audience today. And please do tweet your key takeaways for the panel discussion as and when you find something exciting or you have a minute to spare. So to start the panel discussion, I'm going to have a few questions. And the first question to you, Dr. Velumani, is that COVID has resulted in a very strong message about how healthcare in times to come should be or could be delivered. How do you see the healthcare delivery landscape evolving post-pandemic?
Thank you, Dr. Jalan. Thanks for having me in this panel discussion. COVID came in abruptly, and it was there 18 months back, and no one knew what it is. No one knew how severe it is, how long it is. No one knew how to tackle it is. We did so many things, and it has disrupted the conventional healthcare. In fact, conventional healthcare was completely shut down for a period of almost 5-6 months. but then we were not prepared, no vaccine around, lot of lockdown challenges. So it has hit us quite a bit, not just the whole economy of the world, also the care delivery in terms of COVID and non-COVID. So in fact, it's a rude shock, and a lot of things post-COVID. We are yet to see a new normal. We are transitioning between wave to wave. We don't know whether the third wave is there or not. If it is there, whether it is bigger than the first or second wave, all guesses. But having said that, the digital penetration, digital utility, digital aggression, all have gone up. I think what was considered as a limited digital consultancy has now become a formal one. So is pharmacy, so is diagnostics, so is entire healthcare. In fact, what was called as healthcare is likely to be now on this called as health tech, which means a digitally complete platform will change. Common man probably will not go once to a diagnostic center and again to pharmacy, third time to again back to doctor for consultancy. There is a likelihood health tech is going to be an order of tomorrow. What probably would have happened by 2030 has happened in 2020 itself. And it's a huge change for all those stakeholders inside the healthcare and also for a common man, where digital seems to be a great option. Having said that, only a very small percentage today truly is consuming digital. The direction is clear. The speed at which it will get into implementation is quite to be seen. That's my inputs.
Thank you so much, Dr. Velumani. Dr. Geetha, what, in your opinion, what are some of the guidelines to create in this country a scalable healthcare delivery model which is quality focused and transparent?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with stalwarts. And just to address that question, I would like to bring upon some aspects of what we are doing here, right? So we have developed a new method of detecting breast cancer, which actually can work in rural areas for low resource conditions, as well as in hospitals and diagnostic center. So while doing so, one of the things that we learned is that, of course, AI plays a huge role in reducing the cost of operations, time of delivery, and also improving the quality of care, as long as the AI models are built pretty well. So the artificial intelligence based basically technology enabled point of care solutions can be deployed in rural areas, right? Making it more affordable, accessible. So that definitely I found to be bridging the economic barriers and gaps and differences that exist in India today between the urban high quality healthcare infrastructure and the rural one, which was of course evident in the COVID timeframe, right? Building on what Dr. Velumani mentioned, right? In COVID timeframe, a lot of things changed, including the rural COVID scene was really pathetic, and how the healthcare infrastructure was not able to manage a shortage of ICU beds, delayed RT-PCRs, and so on. So in all of these cases, as well as in the breast cancer, what I found is cloud-based hosting can give you a very, very highly scalable way of reaching out to multiple requirements, right? For example, we did a AI-based chest X-ray analysis for COVID detection. And that within a week, we were able to cater to 8,000 doctors from 200 doctors, nothing much, just added more power into the cloud. Second aspect is, how do we actually enable an integration framework to this cloud infrastructure or any scalable infrastructure that you have come up with? Have an integration framework with existing mechanisms, existing devices. For example, again, to take the example of X-ray Setu, we enabled an WhatsApp-based kind of a chatbot interface to it, so that the devices that were almost very commonly used, such as mobile phones and applications such as WhatsApp, which every rural doctor, every radiologist using, was able to just reuse that same infrastructure, if I call it, take a picture and then do it. So this kind of telehealth, of course, is picking up, but can we do this telehealth on a very simplistic application platform, simplistic existing infrastructure, and if you can answer that question, I think we will be able to reach, the rural corners of India. Scalability, I mentioned about the cloud, and so that sort of really, really has helped. From the high quality perspective, I just want to mention one aspect, which is about, especially if it's a software as a medical device that is using a hardware software configuration, and a lot of smartness is offloaded to artificial intelligence based software. The right kind of testing and validation of this software models is very, very important. Because many times what I see is these AI scientists of India, many of them, and really, really nice to see the enthusiasm, be it the medical devices as point of care devices or just the software as medical device. The testing has to be really, really thorough, right? And it is, most of them are just doing lab level testing. You have a bunch of data, which you have trained and all of that, and the same thing is used. Prospective testing and testing with good clinical practice, as we say, right? GCP, right? Based clinical studies are absolutely critical. Otherwise, it may work for the first 100 patients, but when you start using in real life, the quality of the delivery, the healthcare diagnosis that is given, they can itself break, which is a huge problem, obviously, because if we assume that RT-PCR is giving COVID positive, it better give it in like as much sensitivity as possible. So the accuracy of interpretation becomes very, very important. And also the process of delivering the healthcare systems, right? Many times what happens, these startups such as ourselves, when we started, right? We were not so worried about, or not so much bothered about the processes of development. Quickly, let's get to the market. That's the mindset of most startups. I would really urge them to think about it as making systematic processes in place. Think about as yourself as a bigger company, bigger corporate, delivering repeatable high quality products. And for this, processes like ISO 13485, all of those need to be followed as well. So if you had asked me this question, let's say 5 years back, which are just out of a research lab, my answer would be, let's get to the, do the trials, try it out before. But over the years, I've really learned that, even as a small startup, you can actually set your quality processes in place so that you're confident about the products that are delivered. Some of these things I would say could be a learning, especially for people who are starting afresh.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Ajay, if I know it right, you were with Max Hospitals Group, then with Manipal Hospitals Group. So my question is, given the large and diverse population we have in the country, one thing which the COVID also taught us or made us aware of, that healthcare has to shift its focus beyond large cities. And so my question is that, what do you think will it take to make that let's say, the distributed model of a healthcare to actually reach smaller towns? What will it take to make that?
Sure. So thanks for inviting me to this panel. I want to first give a fact, which is that when a doctor is seeing patients in an outpatient clinic, typically for every 100 patients, only 8 or 9 will need admission into a hospital. So I think the volume of consultations is 90% of the volume, and inpatient is 10% of the volume, approximately. And then these consultations, of course, also generate pharmacy prescriptions and lab tests. So you can multiply that. So it's 3x multiplied by x versus x. So I think most people forget that most of healthcare is outpatient based.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about making healthcare available in the rural areas, tier 3, tier 4 towns, there is a part of that which is related to hospitalization, and that we cannot escape from. There has to be a physical infrastructure created, which, by the way, is happening in the last decade. I think your former employer Apollo has contributed to that, and hundreds of other hospitals have built in new beds, especially in tier 3, tier 4. And I have been privileged to lead some of these, hospitals in Bhatinda, in Salem, in Goa, in Vijayawada, and in Visakhapatnam. And there is a demand for that, and that is happening, and that will continue to happen. I don't think there is anything that can be dramatically different in that aspect. What is changed dramatically in the other aspect, which is the outpatient aspect, and to some extent the pharmacy and lab aspect, is this whole digitization piece that was talked about by the earlier two panelists. Specifically, I want to refer to the launch of National Digital Health Mission by the Prime Minister last August, and the creation, or actually the beginning of the creation of a unified health interface, which in my mind is a very radical idea, inspired by the unified payments interface, which, as you know, has transformed the payment scenario in India. I believe last month, some 3 billion transactions have happened, 3 billion, okay, on the payment interface, which proves that deep down in the rural areas with feature phones, people are able to exchange money. So I think UHI is trying to create a platform wherein any patient in India can talk to or have a video consultation with any doctor in India. It could be a secondary care doctor, it could be a cardiologist, and that 90% of the volume that we were talking about earlier, a lot of that can move into digital, because we are now a chronic disease society. Almost 68% of our disease burden is chronic disease. And if you are a diabetic, if you are a thyroid patient, if you are a epilepsy patient, and you have seen the doctor before, a lot of your care can be delivered through the digital interaction. So I think as and when this NDHM and UHI comes to life, we can actually see a similar evolution in healthcare that we have seen in the payments through UPI. And that will also in itself be a revolution, but I think it will also enable the first part, the hospitalization and the hospital creation part. How will that happen? Suppose I'm a young neurosurgeon, I'm sitting in Delhi, and suddenly I've got 7 patients in a small town in Uttar Pradesh. You know, I can do a deal with that hospital that, look, I'll come on a weekend and I'll operate on these patients there. Right. So that's how to expect that, you know, the 4,000 neurosurgeons in India to suddenly go and live in each of the 4,000 smaller towns is not going to happen. But when demand starts to meet supply in the outpatient setting, there may be solutions that will emerge in the hospital setting also. But I think we are at the start of the journey, and we should look at some very interesting things happening over the next couple of years.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Velumani, I'm just saying, given the kind of model you created in Thyrocare, I'm just saying, going forward, and you spoke about digital aggression, you know, I'm just saying the digital technology is going to play such an important role. I'm just saying, what are some of the facets? You know, people talk about teleconsult, people talk about, you know, wearables, people talk about POC devices, people talk about digital health. I'm just saying there are a lot of concepts being thrown in the air. How do you see that landscape?
In that way, what we are today talking about, convergence will play a great role. All were in operating in silos, all were in islands, all have to get to the cloud, all have to get disseminated across the geographies. I think the only cost in total healthcare, in my personal opinion, is IT, HR, and logistics. I think the IT is going to play a very big role and make accessible. And there is an inequality in distribution of medical resources, be it medical doctors, be it hospitals. So digitally, it will be bringing in a democracy of delivery of equity for all different strata of the society. Having said that, government has a lot role to play, and the bottom of the pyramid is very difficult to serve. The bottom of the pyramid is still not having any accessibility even to the digital access. Today, we see children who are supposed to be on online learning, or 60% have no access truly for online learning. It's only in the metro cities, it's not even going to tier 3. So there is a huge challenge, but again, wherever there is a challenge, there is a huge opportunity. I believe whatever has happened in this last 20 months, we never dreamt. Today, hotels are all closed for customers, but their kitchens are very busy and customers are being served by the online delivery agencies. I have a reason to believe so will be diagnosed, so will be pharmacy, so will be even consultancy. Plenty of doctors have no time, plenty of doctors have no patients. So is plenty of hospitals have no patients and plenty have no beds. Having said that, this is going to be a cloud which will be distributing across the country for every geography, for every vertical. Yes, there are health bids which today getting attention. Today, man is more aware of healthcare than whatever it was. Trillions of dollars we have spent in this last 18, 20 months in terms of media, social media. People are dead scared about whether they will live for long or not. I don't think any better time for healthcare to grow. I have been talking for the last few months that if we had been growing 10% CAGR for the last 20 years, we should be growing 20% CAGR for next 20 years. It's a huge opportunity, especially the digital world will rule. This is my personal opinion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Velumani. Dr. Geetha, all of you and Dr. Velumani just said that we have such an acute shortage of trained medical personnel in the country. And Dr. Ajay spoke about 4,000 neurosurgeons and we know technicians, physicians, nurses. I mean, how do you see technology playing a role in addressing that gap?
Sure. I think like Dr. Velumani said and Dr. Ajay mentioned as well, the disparity and the non-equity between the number of patients and the number of doctors, to be just that, or the expertise in terms of neuroscience or radiology, is huge. And here definitely technology can play. And digital health is the future of how healthcare will be delivered in the future. So some of the things, I briefly touched upon before is also about, I think there was one point that Dr. Ajay made. Out of the 100 people, maybe only 7 or 8 or 9 may require actual hospitalization. Identifying the high-risk people who need to be brought to a secondary or tertiary care from, let's say, village level or even at home level, right? This can be offloaded to an AI bot today, right? It is true for certain diseases, and AI has matured. Artificial intelligence bots have matured to do, if done well, point of care devices which can actually measure, sense some of the body parameters that are relevant to the disease, and have some algorithms on them or in the cloud trying to say who among these people required to be brought to a hospital, brought to in front of these experts who are very small in number but really necessary for this whole healthcare to sustain, right? So how this can be done as this triage as an autonomous AI is something that we have been experimenting quite a bit, and we've been very successful in cancer and COVID screening and so on, and many other similar initiatives we see. The second thing is, of course, there is this disparity and in terms of the numbers, but it's also disparity in terms of the distance, right? Where all the experts are versus where maybe most population remains, right? And here, telehealth is, again, a technology-enabled solution. We are doing Zoom meetings and can think of patients and doctors being comfortable doing this. And thanks to COVID, the trust issue of talking to a patient or talking, over video is all becoming, the trust issue has been established and it is becoming real today. So that technology, along with the forceful trust building that COVID has done, I think has made telehealth possible. In telehealth, what happens is many of the parameters can be locally measured. Maybe there's a home healthcare worker who goes in, measures some of the vital parameters, and then the quantitative parameters can just be given to the doctor. So here, can the doctor be utilized only for a short period of time where all the data is sort of summarized and given? And so we can also kind of optimize the time of the doctor serving multiple people. Finally, I think, given this shortage of experts and given the population, the end users, especially in urban areas, should start taking their health in their hands. What I mean is, like, of course, we have wearable devices and others where you can have continuous monitoring, and also it could be chronic diseases, right, where continuous monitoring becomes very important. Instead of going, to the hospital for, every week, every day, like, can we have some of these devices, which is also technology-enabled devices, monitoring the health of the person at home, and then anomalies are signaled to the hospital so that there is expert advice when needed at the right time, right? So this and also focusing on wellness, right? All of these devices will make the people, make the citizens focus on wellness as opposed to illness, right? So this aspect of trying to do most of it offline using technology and coming to the tertiary care and the expert advice when needed, and coming there always when needed, right? Not missing out on important patients, but doing that well using technology-enabled solution. There are several things one could do in this whole pipeline, and that's extremely exciting for a technologist or even an entrepreneur to start doing different elements in this whole care pathway.
Thank you. Dr. Ajay, there is a lot of talk about personalization in healthcare delivery, and how do you see data and AI being leveraged to offer that, and how relevant would something of this kind be in the Indian context?
Sure. So we are in a very strange time when on one hand we are generating a lot of personal health data, and yet we are drowning in lack of any intelligent use of that data. So we have all Fitbits, we have walking parameters, we undergo annual health checkups, and we have papers where all of these are lying around. But for a doctor to make sense of all of this data today is actually becoming harder than what was when I was a resident doctor. And I remember when a professor used to take round, they'll say, okay, so what is this case? And we will go, sir, this is a case of glioblastoma, was operated 9 months ago, has received radiotherapy, has come back with a recurrence. So there was a way to summarize the story of a patient. And yet you could zoom into a particular aspect, that why is this patient admitted now and what are we going to do, right? That has become actually harder, because in effect, what the computer science field is doing to doctors is saying, I can't give you a summary, but here is the entire docket in PDF. And you please figure out what is happening with this patient. And doctors are struggling with that. I've had interviews with hundreds of doctors, and they are saying, yes, we have lots of information, but I am a liver surgeon. I don't need to know what is happening in the knee transplant. Is my hydrated recurring or not? Tell me that first, and then you tell me all the other story, right? So there is a lack of what I call intelligent perception, that there is a lot of learning, and I don't want to underplay the importance of AI. I think there is importance of AI in many, many different areas. But when I look at it from a doctor's point of view, or even as a hospital point of view, I've run hospitals, and hospital doesn't have access to intelligent insights. It has access to lots of data. So I think when the question is about personalization, I think the key problem that needs to be solved first is, how do you do intelligent perception? How do you summarize this in a meaningful manner? And the meaning might change. If I am a kidney failure patient, my nephrologist wants to know the sequential values of creatinine over the last 6 readings. If I am a hypertension patient, it's a different story, right? So the story also has to adapt to the meaning that is being asked from that summary. That problem is still unsolved for most part. Yes, there are a few solutions. And in fact, that is one of the problems Neurance is trying to solve. By applying lessons from neuroscience, you know that we are bombarded by sensation, but we have an internal view of the real world. We want to enable doctors and institutions like hospitals or insurance companies to have the same view, and then apply the learnings that AI gives, right? So I have a Fitbit, I wear it, but if I want to see how my heart rate was over the last 6 months, it can give me one aspect of that summary. But if my cardiologist wants to go deeper into it, it's not there, right? So I think there's a lot of original innovation that needs to happen to solve the simple problem of data overload, transferring into meaningful insights. So I think once that problem is solved, personalization becomes real, because from those meaningful insights come some action points, which may be related to your wellness or which may be related to your disease, which your doctor can advise you on. So I want to leave one message to the audience, that the whole game of personalized healthcare has to move away from let's collect a lot of data and some magic will happen, to okay, there is a lot of data, who and how do we make sense of it? And then how does it actually improve our life? If it is not improving our life, it's not personalized healthcare. We are just drowning in a lot of stuff.
Get you. Thank you so much. And before we end, I want to ask a very simple question to all the three patches. If there is one thing, only one thing you pray that should change in healthcare ecosystem in the country, what would that be? So let's start with Dr. Geetha.
I think it's a wonderful question. If you ask me what should change, I would say the doctors and technologies need to come together more to solve this problem. So I think there was one example that Dr. Ajay just mentioned. Yes. So the technologists are very excited about data, building the solutions, but if the doctors are not able to utilize it, there is an issue. And from a technology standpoint, we feel that, you're doing so many things. Why is the doctor not utilizing it? It can save many lives. And so there is this gap, right? Both of us think that other one is not like good enough, right? So there is some kind of a marriage that needs to happen between the two communities. And I think we will get there, but we can get it faster.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Geetha. Dr. Ajay.
So I would like to build on what Dr. Geetha just said by saying that I would like to see technology creating a bridge, a two-way bridge between the population and the doctors, which would lead to the following scenario. I am a patient in Sagar, deep inside Madhya Pradesh, and my doctor has told me that I have diabetes and my creatinine is going higher. He is not a nephrologist. Today, I have to get on a truck, go to Bhopal, search for a nephrologist, and then maybe get started on some better antihypertensive. I am hoping that in the future, I can do it on telemedicine and I can get the opinion there itself. Another scenario, I have a snake bite deep inside Karnataka and there is nobody there. I don't know where anti-snake venom is available. My doctor doesn't know where anti-snake venom is available. He just has to go on an app where technology makes this available. This is there somewhere in the system, which dispensary and which PHC has snake venom and which one does not have anti-snake venom. I wish those patients will be able to, in a situation of emergency, call somebody or video conference with somebody who can guide them in a life-threatening situation. And I think all the pieces of the solution are there. People are technology savvy, thanks to UPI and all of that. Technology components are there. Doctors are now more excited to participate in these. I hope that we see that in the next 2-3 years, and that would be a big revolution for us. And
the final word, Dr. Velumani.
Yes, we are today having a very little budget available for healthcare. The Western world is 17-18% of GDP. India is hardly 1.7-1.8% of GDP. I am pretty sure we will not be spending anything more than 5-6% of GDP. And even with this 5-6% GDP, we will provide most cost-effective solution for our 1.35 billion populations. And with a billion smartphones in hand, we are the most powerful country to make affordable. In fact, we will show to the Western world how healthcare can be much more affordable and yet better reliable than what they are doing. This is my not only wish, it will happen by year 2040.
Thank you, everyone. I think we did have a very enriching discussion.